Bank hacked. Doesn't that headline just fill you with fear? What's been lost this time? Maybe your personal identity information. Maybe my money.
Cybercrime is all around us. In January 2007, a major retailer announced that they had suffered a breach of their computer systems. It was estimated that information on over 46 million credit and debit cards was stolen. The retailer's potential liability from the computer intrusion was calculated at $118 million. The 2006 survey report by the Computer Security Institute and the San Francisco FBI Computer Intrusion Squad shows a staggering $52 million lost through computer crimes perpetrated against 313 companies that were willing and able to estimate loss. Extrapolate that figure worldwide, and we're talking trillions of dollars. When talking about computer crime, we immediately blame security. But what is security? It's defense, and we've been defending ourselves since the beginning of time. If we take a closer look, we discover that modern-day IT security is built on ideas and principles that were established thousands of years ago and well documented by the Chinese general Sun Tzu in the 6th century BC. We'll discover from an expert historian how castles that defended our lands were built with multiple layers of security, providing defense in depth. Defense in depth has become the panacea of protection for today's IT systems. We'll see how long-established ideas combined with new technologies are shaping the way we think about IT security for the future. We have a natural instinct to defend ourselves and our personal possessions. We lock our doors and windows, lock our cars, lock ourselves in at night. Early cave dwellers built fires at the entrance to their caves to keep the wild animals out. Little did they know firewalls would be featuring in the 21st century. So what's changed between then and now? It's the enemy and the attack surface. The attack surface is the area we expose to the enemy.
Even hedgehogs know how to protect themselves. When threatened, they roll into a ball and present an impenetrable defense of spiky spines to the enemy.
Build a castle and the enemy can attack its walls. To attack it, they had to transport heavy siege equipment and surround the castle.
Build an IT system, connect it to the internet, and the enemy can attack from anywhere in the world with nothing more sophisticated than a personal computer. Thousands of people's personal identity information or credit card details may be stolen, and the theft can go on for years.
For the company that owns the IT system, the loss can be financially devastating. It can damage the credibility of the company and affect its ability to trade. Insecure IT systems present a huge global risk, which can leave us dangerously exposed to hackers and fraudsters. But the technologies are available to build truly secure systems. The trick is staying one step ahead of the game.
IT security is about keeping the bad guys out while allowing the people we trust access to our systems. Make the systems too secure and our users can't work effectively. Too weak and we suffer a break-in. The art is in getting the balance right.
Protecting IT systems has many similarities to combat. We are defending our systems against the enemy. There was a very wise Chinese general, Sun Tzu, who lived in China in the state of Wu in the 6th century BC. He wrote a book entitled The Art of War. If you know the enemy and know yourself, you need not fear the result of 100 battles. If you know yourself but not the enemy, for every victory gained, you will also suffer a defeat. If you know neither the enemy nor yourself, you will succumb in every battle.
And Sun Tzu's ideas continue to shape our thinking today. The hackers are today's enemy, and we must understand them and the tools they use to break into IT systems. Armed with this knowledge, we can defend against the invaders.
So how do we defend our systems? We need to stop the bad guys gaining access.
If we want to 100% protect the data on this computer, I could disconnect its power. I could pull out its network cable and have it locked in a safe. It would be 100% protected against any potential hackers. But how useless is that? What good is a system that is not available? Put the computer back on the desk and it's immediately physically exposed. Plug it into the network and it's available to any potential hackers that might be sitting on any other computers on that network. So what's our first line of defense? Our first line of defense is good physical security.
We can restrict physical access to our computers by controlling access to the building.
The way that the portal system works is that the individual will approach the outer doors, the doors will open, they'll walk in, doors will close, a volumetric check is performed. And this is like a sonic check whereby it checks the area within the portal to make sure there's only one person in there. And then they will then be invited to submit their biometric credentials, be it fingerprint, hand, or iris recognition, and assuming that they're accepted on the system or that their profile allows them access, the second set of doors will allow them access to the sensitive area. If any of that process fails, then the rear doors open and they're asked to leave the portal.
Sorry, you were not identified.
Doesn't look like we can get around that lot, but in other situations it may be possible. So we need another line of defense, and we should restrict who is allowed to log in to our systems. We only want to allow people who we trust to use the computer systems. So how do we identify them? The most common way to log on is with a username and password.
With IT systems, the combination of names and passwords are unique to the individual user. The problem is people tend to use simple passwords, the name of their pet, their children, or even the project they're working on. This makes passwords easy to guess, which results in a breach of our defenses. The hacker has many tools available to them to automate the process of password guessing.
To defend against simple password cracking, we need to set our systems to use strong, complex passwords. The password must have a minimum length, contain upper and lower case characters, punctuation marks and numbers.
When I introduce this concept, I immediately get puzzled looks. I ask someone to think of something that's happened to them. Now let's jazz it up a bit. We've just created a new password that's extremely strong and yet easy for the user to remember.
Strong passwords are great. They identify someone has logged onto the system with a username and the correct password.
But is it really Joe that logged in? Maybe his password's been stolen. Security can be strengthened by requiring the users to be in possession of a token that is unique to them. A smart card has a microchip in it that confirms the user's identity. Of course, smart cards can be stolen. And if we truly want to identify a user as being present, we need to identify a biometric characteristic that is unique to them.
Human Recognition Systems is a company that specializes in biometric identity.
First of all, we have to capture some biometric detail from you. Then that gets processed through a mathematical algorithm, that's the complex bit, and then that gets turned into a very long telephone number, which effectively becomes your biometric template, as we call it. Hand geometry recognition, probably the oldest biometric technology in terms of commercial deployment. It's been around since about 1986. The technology actually measures the shape and width of your hands. It's not the most accurate technology, it can only be used for one-to-one, so verification, but it keeps on working every time. Iris recognition is probably the most recent entrant in terms of the commercially viable technologies. The great thing about the iris is, with the exception of colour, which we're not interested in, there's no genetic material in the eyeball. So it's the most unique feature on your body. And that's one of the reasons why it's the most accurate piece of information, should we say, or biometric information to extract from the body, and why, in performance terms, it's the technology that works at the greatest scale. We capture your iris data, simple by using a special camera, and then when you come to interact with the system, you would effectively walk up to the system, look into the iris camera, your iris credentials will be captured, processed into a template, then matched against the central database. And assuming your access rights are appropriate, it will allow you access to the system.
Now, our systems are protected by two lines of defense. If our attacker breaches our physical security, the next line of defense is authentication.
But this is not a new technique. Our ancestors have been using defense in depth for centuries.
Harlech Castle stands on a rocky outcrop some 200 feet above sea level. If an attacker successfully managed to get through the outer gate, he was faced with the huge inner gate. This wooden door was reinforced with a solid drawbar behind, and keeping him trapped there was a portcullis. If the attacker successfully got through the portcullis, he would then be in a small killing box. From the ceiling, things could be dropped on him, he could be shot at, but at either side there are arrow loops. If the attacker managed to get past the arrow loops, he was then faced with another portcullis, beyond which was a closed solid door with yet another reinforced drawbar. This part of the gate passage is slightly different. There are no arrow loops either side, but above, instead, there are a series of 4 murder holes through which weapons could be shot at the enemy and weapons dropped. An attacker would find themselves under a deluge of rocks and arrows coming down through this considerable number of murder holes. This was defense in depth.
So this is the inner keep. This is the data center that contains the servers that host all of your personal identity information, details of all your assets, and through which this organization trades. Real crown jewels. The value of the hardware is insignificant compared to the data. If the data is lost or tampered with, your company may be lost. What value do you put on that? Of course, it's not just physical security that's required. We also need to make sure that our systems operate at the correct temperature. Much like us, if they overheat, they get poorly. And should the power fail, they become completely useless.
If an organization can't provide the correct environment for their systems, they can use the services of a company that specializes in hosting computer systems. I've just arrived at one of the hosting centers for the Telecity Group, based in London's Docklands.
So here we are in the heart of the data center, and the first thing that strikes you is the incredible noise. It's a noise of thousands of computers running. It's their fans. You know how our home PC fans make noises? Well, here, this is incredible noise. Now, in fact, the Telecity Group hosts for over 3,500 companies. And a company can rent a single rack, maybe a whole row of racks, or maybe just a quarter rack space. All of the computers generate a lot of heat, and the heat needs to be extracted. And this is the role of a heat exchanger. And there are many heat exchangers in the building. And they exchange heat with chillers that are running on the roof plant. This place is an absolute labyrinth, really easy to get lost. And all of these computers are hungry for power. In fact, this is where the electricity comes onto the floor of the data center.
How much do you trust your friends? Would you leave the keys to your house with them? Maybe your wallet?
How about the keys to your brand new Ferrari? It depends. Trust varies. The same applies to the users of our IT systems.
If one of your own users perpetrates an attack, they will be restricted to the access that's been defined for their level of trust. The level of trust in techie speak is known as privilege.
One of the primary goals of a hacker is to elevate their privilege within the system. The ultimate goal being that of system administrator. This elevation of privilege attack can allow the hacker access to anything.
So how do hackers attack the systems? Over the network, or by misleading a user to disclose their password or carry an attack into the company. Let's watch Joe arrive at work. He sees some complimentary USB memory sticks and instinctively picks one up. So now Joe logs on and he's authenticated onto the corporate network. Joe has just taken a potential attack right inside the heart of our organization.
Hackers' code can only enter our systems through an input device. Computers have many input devices such as keyboards, mouse, DVD drives, USB ports, and the network interface. Once our systems are physically secure, a hacker can only attack through an open port. The attack Joe innocently triggered with the USB memory stick would have failed if the USB port had been disabled. To reduce the attack surface for a computer, we close off all unnecessary ports, one of the roles performed by a firewall.
The network doesn't just consist of a single input port. Think of the computer's network interface as the computer's telephone exchange. Different parts of the operating system and applications are listening at different extensions. As with telephone systems, each network port has a different extension number. If we have an input device enabled, there's always a possibility that evil code can enter our systems. Our next line of defense is virus and malware detection software. I'm off to visit Sophos, a leader in defending systems against malicious code.
Wow, what an amazing building. It looks like a 21st century castle. Look, it's even got a moat and maybe a drawbridge. And where there's no moat, there's even solid walls.
There's about 250,000 pieces of malware that we're currently detecting, and that grows by about 8,000 each month. So it's pretty significant. And there's a lot of people, what we call script kiddies, that actually steal existing malware and tweak it to change it just slightly. The point of doing that is to try and get through maybe antivirus software that can detect the main one, but not actually detect the new kind. So they'll just change it slightly to try and bypass through security.
We hear this term quite often, zero-day attack. Can you clarify what a zero-day attack is?
Well, a zero-day attack is an exploit that takes advantages of flaws inside operating systems or applications such as browsers, presentation software, that sort of thing.
And so it's coming out before there's a fix for it.
Exactly. So there's no fix available yet, and in fact what it will try and do is attack your machine so that you can actually prevent it. Now there's lots of software available that can help basically put hurdles in front of this. So if you have things like firewalls and intrusion prevention systems and all these kind of different things that can actually be hurdles to help protect you against these attacks until a patch is available.
Okay, so this is our defense in depth, so we're putting multiple layers of defense in.
That's right.
Okay. Can you tell me a little bit about how antivirus, or if you like, anti-malware software actually works?
Well, historically, what used to happen is you would get a wind of a threat, and an analyst would look at this and take it all apart and look for a way to find something unique inside that code that it could then identify it. Now, as every user knows, you have to identify that particular virus, not a clean file, and say it's a virus. That's called a false positive, and that's not good. So that's historically how it works, and that still happens today to an extent. But of course today there's a lot more viruses than there used to be, and so we now get machines to crunch this through. what our analysts do is look for proactive methods to block malware before they actually run. And this is a really important thing because you don't want to, prevention is much better than, reaction and cleanup. So if you can actually see something and go, hey, why is it doing that particular behavior? Or why is it doing this? This is suspicious. Let's just look at this more closely. Oh, it is malicious. Let's stop it from actually executing.
Remember Sun Tzu's wise words: if you know the enemy and you know yourself, you need not fear the result of 100 battles. To defend a castle, there are only a limited number of options. For an IT system, there are literally thousands of settings.
We think of hackers as people, but once we've blocked physical access to our systems, the tools of the trade are the hackers' programs. It's the enemy's software attacking the defender's software, defending good code against evil code.
A hacker's software is looking to exploit a weakness in our code. Remember, the ultimate goal of a hacker is to plant a spy in our camp that can be controlled remotely. I'm going to visit Graham Calladine, who's a security code expert and travels internationally reviewing code and educating companies on good, secure coding practices. Luckily, I've managed to track him down to his office in Staffordshire.
Well, here we have a typical application, and it's taken some credit card info into an interface here. And what you can see here, we have some card information, card type, card number, expiry information, but there's absolutely no validation at all when that data has been entered into the application.
So you mean the data could be entered in, say, from a web page. So I'm typing in my credit card details and I put a string of numbers in there, and you don't actually check that I have put numbers in there, so I could put letters or malformed characters or anything I particularly like.
Exactly. We should always check for what we expect. So for example, here it's a text name field, so which really should we only be looking for letters and maybe a hyphen and maybe of a certain length of data.
So you basically, with this, you're reducing the attack surface.
Exactly.
Okay. So programmers, again, have to have a good process to work to. So how do you go about that?
Well, this kind of example is all part of what we call a security development lifecycle. Microsoft, after some of these Slammer, the Code Red, the NIMDA kind of attacks, it really stepped up its game and developed the security development lifecycle. Now, this is literally a pragmatic process that you overlay onto a development process.
So this is not just about bringing our programmers up, it's actually making the whole company aware of the need for security in the code they produce.
Absolutely.
Yeah. It sounds like everyone should be going through this, all code developers in all organizations. So how do they start?
Really, they need to start by looking at what Microsoft does and maybe getting hold of the Security Development Lifecycle book that was written by Michael Howard and Steve Lipner. So that's a good place to start. We also have on the MSDN site the Patterns and Practices security engineering site, which is similar to what I've shown you today, which is more for the enterprise applications, line of business application, which is like a lighter version of this SDL process that we use internally.
In the world of IT software, things can change overnight. But the battle is being fought with code against code, and code can always be updated to defend against the latest weaponry of the hacker.
If a breach in the defenses is detected, Microsoft distributes a patch in the form of a security update. The majority of patches are distributed on the second Tuesday of the month. This is known as Patch Tuesday. Savvy administrators will apply the patches in a timely manner, as many of the hackers use the patch to work out how to exploit the system. With the patch applied, the exploit will fail.
The Slammer worm hit computer systems over the internet in 2003. Slammer exploited a code vulnerability in SQL and infected 75,000 systems within 10 minutes.
The surprising thing was that Microsoft had released a patch 6 months earlier. One of the banks I worked with was hit by Slammer. All of their SQL servers were fully patched and clear, but unknown to the IT department, their developers were running the SQL desktop engine, and none of those systems were patched. Remember the words of Sun Tzu: know your enemy and know your environment.
The internet is amazing in the way that it provides global communications, but this high-speed worldwide connectivity can be used for good or evil. I'm meeting with Mark Harris, who is the director of Sophos Labs. Yet another noisy environment. This rack of servers is automatically analyzing the latest threats to our systems.
Here at Sophos we have labs for spam analysis, web analysis and malware analysis all over the globe. So we have locations here in the UK, North America and Australia. Our role is to, when there's a new piece of malware that we don't currently detect, react quickly, get protection out to our customers, and then try and get back ahead of the game. How can we write more and more generic detection to get the next version and the version after that, to make it harder? There's actually been a shift away from just sending out pieces of malicious software as an attachment within an email. It's now actually embedded within the email as a link. So there's a good example of one. There's been a lot of electronic greeting cards flying around, and the idea is it says you've got a greeting card from a friend or a neighbour, and you click on this link to view your greeting card. It's actually not a greeting card, it's a piece of malware.
But you've actually can show the anatomy of an attack on your globe up there.
Yeah, so what I've constructed here is a typical sort of campaign. This isn't the e-card one, but it's a similar sort of process. So here we are in the middle of England. We receive a spam message. So the first thing we do is trace where the spam message is originating from.
So this is the initial spam sent to you. This is the email, which is
This is the email, and it's sent from a location in Warsaw. When you click on the link, in this case, it sends you to a website in North America, near New York. And that's hosting a piece of malware that is creating a small iframe within the web page. And all that does is redirect you to another website, this time in Beijing, and that uses another exploit, in this case an animated cursor exploit from earlier this year, to create another little frame on your web page that sends you to a website in Russia that downloads a banking Trojan, so that next time you log into your bank account, it steals the bank details and sends it off to the bad guys sat on a beach somewhere collecting all your money.
So how do we deal with all these undesirable elements on the internet? If we're hosting a website, our first line of defense is a firewall. Only traffic destined for the website is allowed in, minimizing the risk to our other systems. Of course, this doesn't stop the enemy getting to our website, and if the server hosting the website is not fully secure, it may be possible for the enemy to take control. We can add another line of defense to protect our crown jewels from direct internet access. The web server can be placed on a perimeter network, and a second firewall separates the perimeter network from our secure network. The perimeter network is sometimes referred to as the DMZ, yet another term from military history. To add additional lines of defense, there are many technologies that can be used to analyze network traffic and look for malicious activity. One such technology is intrusion detection systems, or IDS. I'm meeting up with Andy Cuff, who is a network security specialist.
In order for two computers to talk to each other, they've got communication protocols. So they've got specific rules in how they talk to each other. Now, generally speaking, in order to break into a computer, this isn't always the case, but you would step outside those rules and cause the remote computer to hiccup and allow you to get in. So an intrusion detection system may actually look at those rules, and as soon as you step outside those rules, it will alert and say there's an anomaly on that particular network. There are also known profiles of particular attacks. So going back to the castle scenario, if someone approaches the castle with a bow, then there's a good chance that they're going to be a dodgy character that you maybe want to sort out. And it's the same on the networking side. There are specific character sets and command strings that would indicate that something is occurring.
Okay, so how are we meant to respond to this?
obviously you can call in the guards and ask them to go and sort out these rogues that are attacking you, but that tends to be a little too late. Therefore, more recently, they've started to introduce intrusion prevention systems, which takes basically the IDS to the next step, and it will actually block the traffic as it sees it. So as these events start to occur, it will stop it in its tracks effectively, and it will also alert the guards as well that it's seen that.
You may be surprised how modern-day IT system security is built on well-established strategies handed down from our ancestors and the instinctive knowledge of animals.
Combine this with modern technologies and ideas, and we have a winning combination to take IT security into the future.